Hi everyone, welcome, and let's give a couple more minutes for people to join, and we'll get started. Two or three more minutes. Okay, hello. Um, Thank you for joining. Welcome to session number 3 of our webinar series. Today we're going to be covering server-side JavaScript in Marketing Cloud. For all attendees, we will make available the recording of this webinar after we finish. And there's a chat window where you can post questions that will leave some room at the end of the presentation. I'll try to answer those. So let's get going. So some housekeeping items first. As I said, send the questions through the webinar chat window. Remember, there's a lot of material around the internet on server-side JavaScript. I recommend using Stack Exchange from Salesforce. Also, a lot of material on the community. The developer sites have all the documentation on this language. And there's material I'm going to use for the coding presentation. It's available in a GitHub repository that you can see on the screen. So what are we going to cover today? I'm going to do a quick comparison between AMPScript and server-side JavaScript. We're going to see server-side JavaScript basic syntax and some considerations, useful tips, and we get hands into code right away. I'm going to be working on doing some dynamic content on an email. I'm going to use server-side JavaScript and guide template language. which is a framework that complements very well with JavaScript to do dynamic content. And after that, we're going to see how to do some batch processes in Marketing Cloud through script activities, using, of course, the same JavaScript language. Finally, we're going to review some documentation you can use, some useful links, and some time for questions. Okay, about me, I'm presenting this. I'm a web developer, and a few years ago, I mainly dedicated myself to develop inside Marketing Cloud. So I have a Salesforce Marketing Cloud consultant and a Salesforce Marketing Cloud developer certifications. So for those of you who attended session 1 and 2 on AMPScript, you've seen a very similar slide in those presentations where can I use AMPScript. Now we're going to see where can I use server-side JavaScript. And it's mainly everywhere in Marketing Cloud, subject lines, messages, content blocks, pages, even profiles. There's a single difference with AMPScript, which is exclusion scripts in user-initiated sense. Those support exclusively AMPScript. We can use server-side JavaScript in those. But taking that aside, we can use it like every single place you can use AMPScript, you can use server-side JavaScript. So this is a comparison, and I don't want to go into the discussion on which one is better. Actually, we're going to be using some AMPScript in today's presentation in very specific locations for very specific purposes, but AMPScript is all over the place in Marketing Cloud. So this is a comparison just to understand, you know, what is the main advantages or disadvantages of each one. So you choose what to use in each situation. I'm not going into a discussion which one is better. So for error handling, of course, we don't have a try-catch block in AMPScript. So that's a big advantage for JavaScript. We don't have function declaration in AMPScript, which leads to some code repetition in some cases. So that's another advantage. There's a debate about processing speed. Seems to be like in some cases, we're talking about millions and millions of records. Processing seems to be a non-conclusive, but still some advantage on the AMPScript processing, but I never saw like a real issue on this. Learning curve, you know, for maybe for non-developers, AMPScript is easy to start with, you know, and do some personalization and some logic in your emails. So that's why some people get this very fast. Today, I'm focusing this more like on developers audience. There's some functions in AMPScript to update information in Salesforce CRM, which are very useful, are not available in Salesforce server-side JavaScript. Code style is going to be a great difference here. Code style in AMPScript is not so nice, and well, you know, everyone likes JavaScript. And we have what we're going to also see at the end of the presentation, batch processing in JavaScript, and I use a yellow for AMPScript because there's kind of a hack to do so in AMPScript also. So for this presentation, I'm going to be using the same email you using in session 1 and 2 for AMPScript. So I'm going to basically do the same personalization on the subject line, personalization, the first name, the product information, the main product here, which is an abandoned product, and some event information here. I'm going to do all the same logic, but this time with JavaScript. So some basic syntax and considerations here are important. Marketing Cloud executes ECMA 3.0. That's from 1999. That's bad news. This is really old. Good news. 3.0 was the first version that included try-catch blocks. So that's good. But you need to keep this in mind to avoid some frustration. For example, if you're going to be doing, for example, something as simple as an array find in in a JavaScript array, you want to find an element, and when you use this function, this is ECMA 6, so it just won't work. So that could be frustrating if you write like a beautiful JavaScript and you put it in Marketing Cloud, it just does not execute, okay? You are going to be allowed to use everything, of course, that is ECMA 3 or previous to that, okay? Like this kind of string functions or any kind of other functions. So let's start. Let's get some hands into code, and I'm going to switch to Marketing Cloud right away. So close this, and I'm going to be using, as I said, the same email. I'm going to make a copy of this, and let's edit this one. Okay, nice. So there's 3 techniques to do personalization replacements with JavaScript. There's 3 tags: evaluation, field, and variable. Evaluation is going to output any kind of JavaScript evaluation that returns a result here. Field is going to output any kind of sendable field that you have in your sendable, any field that you have in your sendable data extension. And variable is going to output any kind of JavaScript variable. So let me show you an example of that. So in our email, we have to put the current month in here. So we can use something like an evaluation here. So I'm going to put something like this. So new date is a very basic JavaScript here that returns a current date object. And I'm going to use this format tag to return the month name. For the first name, let me locate that first name. And we're going to be using first name field replacement. Field name. So let's quickly review the data model that we were using for this email before. I'm using the same data extensions from session number 1 and number 2. Basically, our sendable data extension is an abandoned basket table where we have subscriber information that supposedly abandoned a cart. So we have an email, a first name, and a basket ID, okay? With that basket ID, we're going to get basket details, meaning 1 or more records for that basket that have a product related to that and a price related to that product ID over there. So as my sendable data extension has a first name field, I can use this field name, first name over there. So let's see if this works. Let's do a preview. Perfect. So we have first name here, and we see the first name, and we have April in our subject line. Okay, that's cool. So now let's see the variable replacement. So I'm going to start my script block. I usually write the script block at the very top of the email, where I put all my logic, right? So I'm going to use a variable, and I'm going to use for the moment an object that is called recipient, which gives me the current recipient that I'm doing the preview of the email. And I'm going to put that in a variable, okay? So let's find the first name again here. And instead of a field, I can use variable b first name. And it should have like the same effect. Perfect. But let's see one more case, which is, let me find something like this, this is typical, you get data in your system, and so like we don't have the proper case like the capital B over there. So let's use a function to correct that. So let's go back to the code, and I'm going to do something like this. I'm going to say, well, what if I just do the proper case of that variable first name, right? So if we try to do this, that proper case is an AMPScript function that won't work in server-side JavaScript. So what the good news is, like, you can write your own function. So I'm going to pull my very modest function here to do a proper case, right? Let me do this and explain this in a second. So I'm going to pull my own function here to do a proper case. And let's see if it works. Beautiful, that works. So I know what you're thinking. You're going to be writing a lot of functions to support your work, your Marketing Cloud, and you won't pull all those functions in every email that you have to build, right? You won't like to do that. So this is what I usually do in these scenarios. I have like a content block, an HTML content block, right? And you can drag in here like only a script, right? And let's save this and say this is my server-side JavaScript personal library, okay? And you can start adding stuff that you use, like commonly used for your emails. Then in my emails, I just reference that library. That's what I usually do. Again, this is like a tip. You'll find your own best way to do stuff. So how do you bring that in here? So let me go back to my presentation here. To this. There's a set of functions. I'm already using the platform objects and functions. I'm already using platform.recipient object to get the current data. Now I'm going to use content block by name. And we're going to be using many of these, like stringify and parse JSON to serialize and deserialize objects, etc. So let me go back to our email. And I'm going to do something like this in our email. Instead of creating the function each time, I'm just going to use my library here. And that's it, okay? And I do a response right to put that content in here. So that's it. I'm including, this is kind of an include hack if you want. So here we go. Let's see if this works. Perfect. Nice. Okay, let's get going to the next section of the email, which is this product section here, where we're supposed to pull data from that extensions to achieve this. So I'm going to using lookup rows in this case to get information from that extensions to be able to do this. It's back here to the code. And again, working in my script block at the very top of the email. First of all, I'm going to do some basic data initialization, like meaning I'm going to set like a default product that in case we can't fetch the latest, the most expensive product that was abandoned, just having like a fallback product information. Okay, I get the base URL for the product, the name, the URL, and the product handler, which is kind of an ID, and I'm building the product URL. Okay, so here I'm going to be using a small piece of AMPScript here, and I'm going to explain why in a second. But after all this JavaScript, again, this is JavaScript, and I'm setting a value to an AMPScript variable here. Okay, and I'm going to show you why in a second. So now I have this. I'm going to go try and do the replacements here in the email. Yes, for the one that asked about this, yes, there's a single version of the functions available in Marketing Cloud so far. So I'm going to go and see the product description here. Excellent. So I'm going to change that. If you remember, we're setting a bunch of variables here. One is product name. I'm going to be using this one, and this one, okay? So let's go to the product description. And here I'm going to be using a variable. This is a variable. Here I have product description again. Let's see. Here we have the product description again. I think I misreplaced that. Yeah. Perfect. And where I need to find this image over here, which I think is here. Here's the product image source, and I'm going to replace that with another variable, which is the product image URL. Okay, so I have the source of the image, the alternate text, and we have a link if you click on the image. And I'm going to be using AMPScript. Bad news for all those that don't want to do AMPScript. You need to do AMPScript. This is a redirect to function that will wrap your link with link tracking, and that is not available in server-side JavaScript. Don't ask me why, but that's why you'll find the function here. That's why it's crossed here. Don't use it, just like doing like any concatenation, but it's not doing the wrapping itself. And if you want to track links, you want to do that. So in this case, I'm using AMPScript. Great, let's see if this works. Beautiful. Of course, we have the Mexico for every record here. So let's make that dynamic using lookup rows, okay? So now that I have my default values over here, I'm going to be doing something like this. First, I need to fetch my basket ID, okay? So I'm going to go again to my recipient object, and I'm going to say, okay, give me, from my sendable data extension, give me the basket ID. I mean, give me the value for this column. This is literal. You need to use the exact same name as your column. From that, I could do a lookup to the details, right? Because I have the basket ID, something like this. I can look up in order rows on, this is the name of the data extension. Give me a single row, the top one, let's say in SQL, order by the price, where the basket ID is this basket ID that I have here. And now this is the nice part about source of JavaScript. In AMPScript, you have to do like a row function, then a field function, then a row count function. Everything is functions. Here it's like more object oriented. So I could do if basket details dot length greater than 0. We're all set to work. Okay. So it's a little more. There's some code, less code to write here. Then I could do something like, okay, give me the product related to this. Okay, give me the product. So I'm going to go to the product catalog based on the product ID, and look at this. I could do the first element in my basket details array, which is the result of this lookup, dot, and I could use the properties just as objects. You can do, I'm going to do the same thing just below here, and I'm going to do, okay, product name. So you can use dot description, dot image URL, dot handle, just as you have your fields in your data extension. So let's see the product catalog. See, I'm getting the description, the image URL, etc. Okay, so a little more object oriented in my opinion. So here we have the information, and then we build the product URL, and we have the set value for the AMPScript link wrapping. Let's see if this works. Okay. Nice. Okay. So we made this section dynamic. Let's go to this one below here. So before that, let me go back to my presentation. So we've seen this, like how you build your own library. So you create a content block, you put your JavaScript functions in there, and how you reference that library in your emails. You just fetch that by content block by name. We've seen some of these functions. We're going to see now stringify and parse JSON functions in a minute. And we're going to see some guide template language. Leverage handlebars or mustache template languages, very well known, basically are replacement frameworks. The attempt is to reduce at least a little the spaghetti code, meaning mixing a scripting technology with HTML in your messages. It's a slight attempt to do that. And there's a lot of features in guide template language. We're just going to see a few of them, like to declare a data object, and then do some basic flow control to iterate and to do an if statement. And then we do just replacements, okay? This is what we're going to be doing. So let's go to this event section, right? We need to pull data from another extension, which is the events here, which has 6 records, and we need to pull 4. And I'm going to use the classic technique of using a filter here to bring all and order by event date, okay? So let's go here. Again, I'm still writing in my top section all my scripting, okay? That produces no output, and it has like all the logic I need for doing my email dynamic. So let's do this. And I'm going to pull an events variable, which is a lookup order rows, table events, give me top 4, give me order by event date. As I have no filter, I make this filter that is actually no filter, okay? And I'm going to do a serialization of this object. Basically, the typical stringify of this object, okay? This is stringify. Now I'm going to use that as a data object. And I'm going to do something like this. This is not server-side JavaScript anymore. This is guide template language. So as you notice, I closed my script over there, and now I'm working on a guide template language section. I'm just declaring my data object in here. And if you see there's a property that's name is target, I just put the name of the variable that I have the JSON. So this matches to this here, okay? And we give a name to our data object. This is going to allow us to make this dynamic. So let's go to the event. Let me find that, event 1. Event 1. Here I have all the event mockup stuff, okay? So I'll start with, I'm going to remove the hard-coded stuff. So I'm going to get rid of event 2. I'm going to get rid of event 3. No hard-coded, no hard-coded. I'm going to get rid of this cell. So I have like one template for this. And I'm going to do something very simple, which is doing something like this. Each, right? And I'm going to use the name of my data object. That's it. Beautiful. Now I'm going to close my each section here, and I'm going to do replacements. Again, I can use the exact same names we have in my data extension. Event name, event promo code. So let's do event name. Sorry. Event date. Event promo code. Okay. Beautiful. Let's see if this works. Nice, nice. We have our events. order by date. So let's see, the first one is signed message shared. Signed message shared. That sounds correct. Sounds correct. So let's see how we can make this display in 2 by 2, which was the original email design, right? So let's go into this. And let me go back to my presentation for a second. So here is a recommended approach. You can do this by doing conditional statements and do some scripting in your HTML itself. I try to do something like these 4 steps. I retrieve data using lookup functions, all the data I need. And in case I need, I manipulate that data, which we're going to do right now. Then we serialize what like we have done already and declaring the object. So what we haven't done so far is doing some kind of manipulation of the data. So let's go back to the email. And after I get my data here, I could do something like this. Okay, so I'm going to iterate through my events rows, and I'm going to set a new property. As JavaScript objects are dynamic, I can add a new property and set some data in there. I use this a lot in the sense of also I can do some events and say, I don't know if there's something I want to highlight, right, for a specific recipient, right, because of their preferences or any kind of attribute of that recipient. I can do a function that analyze that and add some attribute to my row, and then I use these stuff just as replacements in the HTML. So I reduce the amount of scripting nested in my HTML. It's like preparing all the stuff in here and then just go and do replacements. Let's see how we can use this is even, which I'm doing the division by 2 in our code. So I'm going to write here just an if statement. And I'm going to say is even equals to 0. I'm going to open a row. And then I'm going to say if equals to 1, I'm going to close my row. Sorry. Let's see if this produces the expected output. Beautiful. Now we have a 2 by 2 kind of output here. Notice something. We have like, for example, these kind of situations where we want to format and do some stuff with the data in here. We can do something like this. And again, this is good news and bad news. Good news is that in each replacement, for example, here, we can use a function. That's good news. So I could set equals, and I could use the format function. So I would say, give me this data in month, day, 2 years. Beautiful. The bad news, this is AMPScript, not server-side JavaScript again. So as you can see, AMPScript is, is meant to be there, of course. So let's see if this works. But at least you have the opportunity to do stuff like this, okay? Beautiful. So let's move into next section. Next section is, well, first to recap, this is kind of the intended thing. In AMPScript, you will end up doing like a lot of, open a tag, do some iterations, close my tag, do some, HTML with replacements in AMPScript, then open an AMPScript tag again, and do some more stuff. Don't forget to close, any statement because you will break out. Here is in some ways not like state of the art, but you reduce in some way the spaghetti code here. So let's go. Let's walk away from the email message itself for a minute and go to script activities, which is another place in Marketing Cloud where we can place server-side JavaScript, and we can put that in schedule or trigger tasks in Automation Studio. So we typically do this for integrations to manipulate data that we get from external system, but you can do any kind of stuff like sending emails, triggering stuff, triggering other automations, creating data extensions, etc., etc. Keep in mind, don't do like a very long batch because you will have a 30-minute timeout period. We're going to briefly see a web service proxy object that it will easy give you the capability to do interactions via the SOAP API, which is really powerful. And a couple of tips: use login all the time to see what's going on with your script activities. And always use try catch, of course, the advantage of using ECMA 3.0. So let's see a script activity. And I'm going to be using some more data, of course. Remember, all the data is in the GitHub. So all the abandoned cart stuff that I used from session 1 is in here. You can replicate that in your account if you want. Plus, I added a couple of tables for this session 3, which also you can find in here. For those who are not familiar with the Deployment Manager tool, it's an extension. It's free to use. You can download it and add it to your Marketing Cloud account. And it's a very good way to export and import objects like data extensions. But you can do other stuff also. Let me go back here to the model. I'm going to be working with this, with a table here, which has a couple of thousand records of data. And let's suppose we get this from an external source. We get this imported in Marketing Cloud, and we have like a serialized object in here as a column named data. Usually, marketers will want to have the information in tabular way because they can use data filters to do segmentations under email campaigns. So we're going to write a small batch process that opens up this, deserializes this, and updates these values here. So the rest of the team, non-developer teams, users of Marketing Cloud, can use this table for segmentation. So for that, I'm going to be moving into Automation Studio. So I have an automation here. On the left toolbar, you notice there's a script activity. I have an empty script activity here. And we're going to write some code in here. Beautiful. So getting a question here, 30 minutes. API limits, those are based on the license. It's huge, the amount of API calls that you can do in Marketing Cloud. It's very hard to hit the limit on that. And I found conflicting information querying API. The SOAP API, it's one. So no matter you use that via AMPScript or server-side JavaScript, you should be able to perform the same actions. So that's a case of troubleshooting the specific case that you mentioned on that. So let's see how we could work on this script. Something we could easily do is something like this. We could do a lookup, right? Bring all my contact book data. That's the name of my data extension here. Iterate those in a for loop here. Do parse JSON. That's beautiful. You don't have that in AMPScript, right? So we get a contact object, which is basically the deserialization of that data. And then in this case, I'm doing something very simple. It's updating back into the same data extension, but this time I'm using the contact first name. And here we have a contact.address.country, because that's the object structure that we have here. Here we have the address, which is an object that opens here. We have the street, city, and country. Great. So first, if you execute something like this and your automation ends, you don't have enough information rather than going through all the data in this data extension and check if the update was correct or not. So again, my recommendation is to start writing some logging. I typically do something like this. I create a data extension that I use for logging purposes, something like this, where you said, for example, you can do other stuff, but I type in a message, and I say, for example, I'm going to start the process, and I'm going to do, after the lookup, I'm going to say, hey, I got this amount of records to process, right? And then I'm going to say, okay, I finish up my stuff, okay? So let's see if this works. I'm going to do the wrong ones on these. Okay. This activity view is not recommended for people with anxiety problems like myself, because you tend to click this too often. Okay, there we go. Let's see what happened, okay? Let's see what happened with our activity. I'm going to go first to see my contact data here. Okay, I see the first name and the country. That's great. That's great. Have here first name. That looks great, right? That looks great. Let's see, just in case. Let's check our log, right? Oops, says it found 2,000 records to process. So be aware of that. There's two very important things here. Don't rely on this. You can say, oh, this worked like a charm, you know, but this preview is just like a top 200 records preview. There's a whole 1,000 records that didn't get updated. And that's because our lookup function here, this lookup rows, does not bring all the data extension information. It just brings 2,000 records, and there's no way around that. So lesson to learn, always use logging to check your updates. So how can you work this through? Okay, we're going to use the SOAP API to pull all the records from the data extension, okay? So I'm going to edit this. And I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to replace this with something with this structure. Okay, there's a web service proxy that I'm doing a new instance here object, which has methods like retrieve, which gives you data from your data extension, but it's paginated. So if you have more data, you need to get the next batch, right? And you get that in the actual response. There's a property that says, hey, I have more rows to process, okay? So this is the way to iterate those. So the data that you get, the data that you get in the retrieve or get next batch here has the records in there. So basically you need to do a for statement here. There's a property in data is results, right? And it's an array, and you get the length and you get to iterate this. But again, there's another disadvantage here, which is we can't do something like this, which will be great, which will be to do like this and then use the data here. We can't use that because the SOAP API is returning serialized information as in dictionaries, like in name value collections. And it's not like an object with the actual structure of the data extension that we are fetching the data from. And the second disadvantage is that it would be great to do something like find here, but we can't. That's ECMA 6. So you need to write some code. I'm going to pull a function here, and I'm going to place it right here, okay? Remember, I'm going to paste this here, but remember, you can start building your own library and put information here. I know this is awful to write a loop to basically find an element in an array by name, but this is how it is, right? So I'm going to be using this get property value function here to get basically the data and the ID of the record, okay? Let me delete this. Beautiful, ECMA 3. Then we have the data and we have the ID. So we could go ahead and deserialize our data, right? And build our object again. Will be something like this, right? We have the data here, and we're going to do the parse JSON here, right? And then we need to do the final update, like we did before in our first version of this script. Great. So I'm updating by ID, and I'm setting the first name and the country. This is very similar to our first version of the script. Again, I'm going to add some logging into this in case my execution fails. And we're going to test this. So let's say starting process here. Let's say I'm going to do here, I'm going to say, okay, in this batch of results, how many records I got. And I'm going to signal completed. Okay. See if this works right now. Again, I'm going to be clicking this a lot. We can check our log anyway during execution. So let's do that. Okay. The retrieve function gets 2500 instead of the 2000 with lookup rows function. That's good, still not enough. Okay. And then we can see that we get the remaining 500 in the second batch and process completed. Again, we could check this, but you will need to export this and check everything that you have, that information has been updated. You can't remember you're seeing only 200 records here. So this looks like pretty much like the first time that we thought this worked, but actually didn't very well. Beautiful. There's one thing that is missing into this script, but I can leave that up to you to do some practice. Our activity is missing a nice try-catch block, which eventually, at least it should log into that extension that something failed in the update, and ideally shoot an email, saying, hey, our activity failed for this and this and this record. That will be great. And you can do that as a practice if you want to improve your skills on this. So I would recommend, if you're interested in this, there's a very good trailhead. It's called Marketing Cloud Programmatic Languages, and it's a very good overview. Kind of basic, but it's a very good way to start with some examples. Very good. I use a lot the developer side because you have all the language documentation in there, all the functions, all the platform functions documented in there, and also you can post questions into Stack Exchange. There's a very good community in there, so I answer from time to time. I ask stuff, so that's very useful. So I think I'm very good on time because I have 10 minutes left. So I don't know if you have further questions on the chat.
I think we got to most of them. Let's see if we have anything additional.
Okay.
It looks like we were able to answer any questions. Does anyone else have any questions that we didn't answer? Feel free to type them in the chat.
Okay. Let's give one more minute, or we'll call it for this time. I think we're going to upload the recording of this. I think I said that, right? So or you're going to email that, right, to the attendees?
Yes, I'm going to go ahead and email this recording tomorrow. And then once we finish our session on Friday, which is our last session, we'll go ahead and record those to YouTube, upload those to YouTube, and we will send those out to everyone.
Perfect. Perfect. All right.
All right, it looks like no more questions, just some comments that this was helpful, and it looks like people appreciated it. So thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much for joining, and we'll see you next time. I hope you join Friday's session. I think that's building custom activity and Journey Builder. That's very interesting topic. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.
And that's on Friday, and I'm going to send everyone who attended today an invite to that if they weren't able to see that yet. So hopefully that's interesting and you will register.
Great. Thank you, Zoe. Thank you, everyone.
All right, bye.
Bye-bye.